This is Continuum Drag, a weekly podcast where we watch sci-fi, fantasy, and everything in between.
This week, Sliders, Season 1, Episode 1.
What if you could find brand new worlds right here on Earth, where anything is possible? Same planet, different dimension. I found the gateway.
Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast grateful no one said the word multiverse. I'm Luke, here's my co-host Jordan. What's real, Jordan?
What's real? Same planet, different dimension.
No multiverse, though.
No multiverse, no.
Honestly, if this was made in 2020, they'd just be saying multiverse every 7 seconds.
Yeah, I agree. No, this is better.
I appreciated it.
Sliders, we're actually doing Sliders.
I know, we're gonna start a speed run of Sliders. I'll just remind everyone at home what we're doing here. If you haven't listened to this season, we're doing speed runs of these shows. So we're going to watch the pilot, we're going to watch the series finale, and then we're going to watch the top 3 episodes of each season. These top 3 were determined via a proprietary algorithm that combines a list from best of lists. We do best of lists, we look at IMDb ratings, and we get suggestions off our social media. As always, of course, if the whole series drops below an average rating of 5 while we're watching it, we'll take the escape pod and get out of here. And one final bit of housekeeping for Sliders in particular. It's a long show. It went on for 5 seasons. So if we keep going with it, we're going to be doing it for a while. So halfway through our run of Sliders, we're actually going to take a break, watch a couple other shows, and we'll come back to finish Sliders sort of halfway through this sort of round of the podcast kind of thing. So, we'll get through, let's say 10 episodes. We'll do 5 now. We'll do 5 later. That's the idea. So at some point, we'll take a break from Sliders so you don't have to listen to Sliders for the next 4 months.
And I'll tell you now, if there's a clip show, I'm jettisoning out of this thing right away. I'm not watching more clip shows. That's it. I'm done for the podcast watching clip shows.
Well, I'm hoping this time we have a pretty good sense of the best of top 3. Unlike the previous shows we've watched in this best of run sort of speed run thing, this one has people who actually care about the show, or at least want to talk about the show. So when we posted this on social to get suggestions, we got a ton of suggestions. So unfortunately, we're probably not going to get to all your favorite episodes, but we're definitely good. I think we're going to do a good job hitting the best of this time.
Well, I think something different about this show, and it's not every show we've done, but because of the format of the show and how we've watched things before, and these a lot of shows that kind of went under the radar, Sliders is a show that I think people have a real affinity for, and I think and I know we'll talk about it, but I watched it when it first came out. I thought Sliders was great. I thought it was I was like, this science concept is blowing my mind.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that real quick then. I wanted to hear what your relationship with Sliders was as a youth.
I remember watching this pilot when it came out, and I watched Sliders, and it's funny, the little things I remember of the pilot are not the things you'd remember. It's weird. It's like remembering a dream. I don't remember a lot of it, but the little points I remember, I remember the part about the gate squeaking. I remember that, and I remembered Rembrandt in his car. I remember that. There was a few little things, but I watched it for the first, I don't think it was quite religiously, but I watched it for the first year or two and really enjoyed it. And I remember when the cast started changing, I dropped off, which I think was maybe season 3 or so. I could be wrong, but that's when I started dropping off because I liked the characters. I thought they were fun people to spend time with.
This is funny. I was going to say the exact same things about my recollections. I remember it starting, I think it's 1995. It's when I'm starting to get into science fiction in general, getting really excited about this show, enjoying the pilot for sure. And then I also recall, though, that I definitely didn't last the entire time. And I think it was when I was thinking about it, I think when the cast started falling away, that is also when I started, dropping out of it. And I think we'll get into it in later episodes because we got a lot to cover this week. But certainly when we posted asking for suggestions, I think some people obviously really enjoyed Sliders, but I think there's also a huge contingent of people who are excited about the show because just the behind-the-scenes drama of it is, I think, something that people really latched onto. So I'm sure we'll get into that as we go through it. But that was definitely, I noticed in the comments on this, they're like, you'll never believe all the things that happened.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of that too, and I thought, I'll leave that for another time. Let's just focus on the pilot.
Yeah. Because, Jordan, before we get into it,
yeah,
we got to talk about Sliders in the world of 1995 to 2000.
What a great time. We were both 13, Luke. Can you imagine how long ago that was? We were 13 years old.
Disgusting how long ago that was.
I know. It's so gross.
But yes, Sliders ran for 5 seasons, March 22nd, 1995 to February 4th, 2000. It started on Fox,
Yeah.
was canceled, and it was picked up for a final 2 seasons on Sci-Fi. Interestingly enough for us, concurrently with First Wave. So First Wave was
Weird.
commissioned, and this was about the same time. They're like, give us 2 more seasons of Sliders. So the Sci-Fi was clearly making a play at this point.
Doesn't this show feel a little bit more modern than First Wave?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has more money behind it. It feels like it feels big. Like this pilot feels.
Yeah,
'cause
it does
it's a
feel big.
2-hour feature. It feels real.
Yeah, and I should say, obviously Fox decided not to go ahead with it after a couple of years, but Fox, I don't know how much interference. I'm assuming that's what happened to all these shows, is they interfered. But whoever was commissioning these shows and approving them did such interesting things, because you look at what they were making, especially in the 90s, like it was crazy that these shows were getting put on the air. Now, it's again unfortunate if they didn't support them and they kind of messed with them, but like I was like, good on this network for putting on something as weird as Sliders.
Yeah, I
in
guess
prime
that's
time.
true. That was their reputation. Eh? They were a bit of a weird outlier of a network that would like take big swings and maybe weren't seen as like they were the rebel station. Though you're right, I think they did end up killing a lot of shows from interference, but
Yeah. So, and I think Sliders was probably one of them, which we'll, I'm sure, talk about in later podcasts.
at any rate, here's what's happening in the world while Sliders is on television, Jordan. And I've truncated a little bit because we've actually covered some of this time period with First
Right.
Wave.
Mm.
But we'll do a little bit. There's still quite a bit
Okay.
to go through what was happening around this time. So in 1995, March 26th, first off, Jordan, Eazy-E dies.
Oh, yeah, Easy-E.
April 19th, 95, the Oklahoma City bombing takes place.
Oh, wow. That was that long ago, huh? Wow.
Yeah, I do remember coming home from school and being like, what has happened?
Yeah, yeah.
May 11th, 1995, the Sega Saturn launches in North America.
Yeah, were you excited?
That was a real big deal when that came out. That was going to be a game changer, and the whole thing kind of fell in on itself.
Yeah, huh? Yeah, Sega seemed to have a few of those, huh?
Do you remember? I think one of the crazy titles for it when it came out was there was like a fish with a human face. The whole game was you could talk to it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it was called Seaman.
Yes, that's right, Seaman.
Yeah, yeah. My friend Dave, who's been a podcast guest, I remember in high school, I remember going over to his house with my girlfriend at the time, and us just hanging out in Dave's bedroom, and Dave playing Seaman. I'm telling you, if there's not a pack of cooler kids, I'd like to see him, you know?
Like playing Seaman. It wasn't the whole game you just say things to Seaman, and sometimes
Yeah.
he knows how to respond.
Yeah, and we just try to insult him to see if he'll get upset and throw poop at you.
Is that what he did?
Yeah, he would get upset and he'd kind of like shoot out poop, I think, out of his like maybe I'm making this up. I'm pretty sure he would shoot poop out of his little like I don't know what you call it, little horn type thing on his head. It was a weird game.
That is very weird. All right. Moving on. August 9th, 1985, Jerry Garcia dies.
Oh yeah, Jerry Garcia and Grateful Dead.
September 3rd, 95, eBay is founded.
Oh, wow, eBay too. Man, isn't it just time is going on?
It's crazy. Things are just moving on. September 9th, Sony PlayStation launches.
Wow. So that Sega Saturn wasn't the game changer because PlayStation was.
Yeah, they came along a month later and just, maybe a few months later and just smashed it out of the park. September 19th, 1995, the Unabomber Manifesto is published.
Oh. Was that a good read?
I don't know. I didn't read it.
I never read it either. What's Kowinski? What was his name?
Yeah, Kowinski. I think that's right.
I can't remember his name. The Unabomber.
Kaczynski, isn't it?
Kaczynski. That was it. Yeah, yeah.
He's in Monsters, Inc., isn't he? He's the one with the big eye.
I haven't seen that. I don't know.
October 3rd, 95, O.J. Simpson found not guilty.
Yeah, it worked out well. And then went to jail for stealing his own memorabilia.
October 13th, 1995, Jordan, Jimin of BTS is born.
Oh, is that the Korean boy band group?
Yeah, the biggest boy band in the world, billion-dollar industry.
Good for them.
I read somewhere that at some point recently they did the economics of it, and they were like 3 to 4% of Korea's economy, so like billions of dollars.
Wow. Yeah. I wonder how much these gentlemen are getting themselves.
Oh, I think they're getting quite a bit.
Oh, are they? Oh, well, good for them.
Yeah, I think I've seen some articles, and I think they're relatively well set, and at this point have become global superstars. Like, I think they're just like, it's for people who are just turning 30, they're doing okay.
Yeah, they're doing okay. Well, good.
November 22nd, 95, Toy Story is released.
Oh, yeah, Toy Story. I did see that. I saw Toy Story.
December 30th, 1995, V of BTS is born.
Just go through all the people of the band, the group, or whatever they're called.
I mean, who knew? They were all born in 1995, apparently. Speaking of being born, Jordan, August 3rd, 1996, Florence Pugh is born.
Oh, yeah, the actress.
Yes. Bigger than ever now.
Is she bigger than ever?
She's pretty big.
Yeah, good for her. She's a good actress.
February 2nd, 96, Gene Kelly dies.
Oh, Gene Kelly. He danced his way off to heaven.
Followed shortly by March 9th, George Byrne dies.
Oh, George Burns. I think he was 99. Maybe he just turned 100.
Yeah, he was pretty old, wasn't he?
He was an older gentleman.
He could have done another Oh God sequel, though. I think he had it in him.
It was funny because I remember people constantly talking about, like, I hope he just gets it to 100. I'm like, why? What does it matter? You need that round number for this guy?
Just for funsies. It's like Betty White. We all wanted to get there.
Yeah, I guess.
Speaking of actors who starred in a lot of sequels, June 1st, 1996, Tom Holland is born.
Oh, he's Spider-Man?
Yeah, that's right.
One of the Spider-Men.
July 5th, 1996, Dolly the Sheep is cloned.
Oh, wow, that's a good one. Yeah, I remember that. That was a big deal.
July 19th, 1996, the Atlanta, Georgia Summer Olympic Games happens.
That's the one where there's a bomb, wasn't there?
Yeah, you'll never guess. July 27th, bomb.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember watching those Olympics. Man, I'm telling you, this is a real stroll down memory lane, let me tell you.
Now the whole incident is a Clint Eastwood movie.
Oh, was it really a Clint Eastwood movie? One of his better.
He did it recently.
Oh yeah, good for Clint. He's talking about waiting timeout. It's time for Clint to stop.
Yeah, he wants to be the first 100-year-old director.
Yeah, it's time to stop, Clint. I mean, look, I like Unforgiven too, but stop.
I don't know, what was the one he just did? The one where he's like a drug runner over the borders.
Oh, I don't know.
He has 2 threesomes in it.
What?
He has 2 threesomes with 20-year-olds in it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's time to pack it in, Clint.
It's fine. Who wouldn't want Clint Eastwood?
I remember, this is a separate thing. I remember people joking in the early 90s. There was a movie he did. I think it was like him and Rene Russo had like a sex scene, and people were like, ew, he's so old and gross. And that was like almost 40 years ago.
September 1st, 1996, Zendaya is born.
Oh, wow.
Also in Spider-Man.
Yeah, man, it was a big year for births.
You know what else was a big year for? September 29th, 1996, Nintendo 64 released.
Another big system, huh?
That was the big wave. These were the big competitors back then in the 90s.
Wow.
October 28th, 1996, Jordan, Maury Amsterdam dies.
Who's Maury Amsterdam?
Jordan, it's Ollie Hayes, the comedian on the cruise ship from Project UFO.
That's a good one. I was like, I don't know who that person is.
December 20th, 1996, Carl Sagan dies.
Oh, yeah, okay.
January 20th, 1997, Clinton starts his second term.
Yeah.
February 10th, 1997, Chloe Grace Moretz is born.
Which one is she?
She's Hit Girl, I believe.
Oh, okay. Wow, they're all so young.
Yeah, they're all our biggest actors now.
Yeah.
March 22nd, 1997, the Hale-Bopp Comet passes Earth.
Okay.
And you'll never guess what happens 2 days later, Jordan.
What's that?
Heaven's Gate cult suicides.
Oh, and that was run by the Gua, remember? From
That's
First
right.
Wave.
I forgot the Gua did that.
Yeah, the Gua did most of this.
They definitely did this next one. May 1st, 1997, Tony Blair becomes Prime Minister of the UK.
Yeah, what a disappointment, huh?
That's a real Gua plot if I've ever heard one.
Yeah.
June 25th, 1997, Jacques Cousteau dies.
Oh, Jacques Cousteau. I haven't heard that name in a long time.
The next day, June 26th, 1997, the first Harry Potter book is published.
Oh, yeah. I was just talking about this with someone because they're a big Harry Potter fan, and I wasn't, because I think I had aged out. I think I probably would have liked it when I was younger, but I was a little bit too old, and I remember being slightly irritated at the whole phenomenon, because I was just like, I don't get this. Why are people loving this so much? But I just missed it. I was just too old. It was like Power Rangers. I was just too old.
Yeah, you were just on the cusp. I think, 5 years earlier it might have hit you, but
Yeah.
it was too late, I barely even heard about them happening until I got to the first year of university. And, at that point I was just like, well, I guess I've aged out.
Yeah, it is funny, the little signpost that you're getting older, and when there's like trends or popular things happening and you have no idea they're happening anymore, it's like, yeah, you're getting old.
July 2nd, 1997, Jimmy Stewart dies.
Oh, Jimmy Stewart.
He lasted a lot longer than I thought he did.
Yeah. It's like the Stooges. They were doing their bit like well into like the 70s. You're like, dear God, the Stooges?
July 4th, 1997, the Pathfinder probe, is that what I've written? The Pathfinder probe lands on Mars.
Yeah. Is that the one that rolled over? That was it?
Yeah, that might be the one.
I think it just rolled over and they're like, oh, didn't see that coming.
Got to put some more legs on the next one. August 31st, 1997, Princess Diana dies.
Oh, yeah. Never forget. Man, we've never stopped talking about that in 30 years. Like, let her
There's
go.
a new season of The Crown, Jordan, all about it.
Let her go. Enough.
We love the royals here.
Ugh, I'm just honestly, Diana. I never have understood the fascination with her, and it's just we've never stopped hearing about her for 30 years. It's like, okay, let it go.
Jordan, do you not identify with the common person that was the ultra rich, already royalty based woman who married a prince?
Yeah, I'm just like, enough, just enough. We get it.
September 1st, 1997, Jordan. Jungkook of BTS is born.
How many more people are in this group?
They're five total.
Oh, okay.
I think anyway, I could be wrong.
And Florence Pugh is one of them?
I wish. She'd be huge here.
Yeah.
September 5th, 1997, Mother Teresa dies.
Yeah, that's right. I remember specifically because everyone was just talking about Diana, and I was like, whatever you think about, people being popular stuff, I was like, give it to Mother Teresa. The lady was living like a peasant, like in poverty, and they're just like, yeah, but she was old and ugly. Back to Diana.
Hasn't history not been kind to her?
No, that's what I mean. I mean, there's some issues with her, but I mean, overall, I think the basic idea was old and ugly, boring, young and beautiful when they die. Let's focus on that.
I remember her dying and it being a big deal, and then like years later, people being like, we don't talk about her anymore. Turns out she was bad.
Yeah, there was some issues. There was some issues with the paperwork.
February 7th, 1998, the Nagano, Japan Olympics happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Don't know why I couldn't say those words.
No bomb on that one.
No, it went perfectly. April 9th, 1988, Ellie Fanning is born.
Okay, sure. Holy, how many more people are going to get born here, Luke?
Not many more, Jordan, because May 28th, 1998, Phil Hartman dies.
Oh, that was sad. I remember that happening.
That was one of the first, I think, celebrity deaths that I was just like, that sucks. I hate that.
I remember, not much of a funny story, but I remember at the Emmys, hearing about this afterwards, he was nominated for an Emmy for his performance, and it went to David Hyde Pierce, who clearly looked embarrassed having to accept this award because everyone assumed Phil Hartman was going to get it, because as that happens, someone dies, people feel bad and give them the award. And apparently Dave Foley leaned over to whoever was beside him and was like, geez, what does he got to do to get an award? And I thought, that's pretty funny. But yeah. Not bad.
And finally, Jordan, September 4th, 1998, Google is founded.
Oh, wow. And things are never the same.
We've been Googling ever since.
Yeah, that's true. It's become a word.
All right, Jordan. I know you want to keep going, but there's a little more business here. There are 4 Oscar ceremonies during Sliders, not including the ones we already covered in First Wave, so 6 technically.
Okay.
But we're only going to do 4. Oscars, 1995. What won Best Picture? Who was the host?
Braveheart won 1995, I think. Unless I'm the 1 year off, which would be an English Patient. It's one of those two. I can't remember when the ceremony goes. And the host would have been, I think it's Billy Crystal. No, it's not. 95 was Letterman.
You're right about the host. You're wrong about the movie. It was Forrest Gump in 95.
Oh, because it's the year. Yeah, the year. Oh, man, I'm always 1 year off. It was 94. Right?
Now you're in good shape because Oscars 96, host and movie.
Yeah, it went to, the next year was Whoopi Goldberg, and it would have been Braveheart.
Correct.
Nice.
97.
English Patient, and I think it's Whoopi again. If it wasn't Billy Crystal, I think it was Whoopi again.
It's Billy Crystal.
It's Billy Crystal,
but
it was
the
English
English
Patient.
Patient. You're correct.
Yeah, right.
And 1998.
Oh, what won 1998? I know the following year was Shakespeare in Love. What was after Braveheart? Oh, was that the weird year? I can't remember what won that year, honestly. I think it was Billy Crystal again. Billy Crystal?
It was Billy Crystal. And the winning movie is a little movie. You probably wouldn't think of it. Titanic.
Oh. Titanic won Best Picture, huh?
Yeah. How could it not?
Yeah, it's true. It was a huge movie. Have you rewatched Titanic recently?
No. I saw it the once. That was enough.
Yeah, I saw part of it on TV a few years ago. It's not very good.
Here's what I remember from going to see the Titanic. I went with some friends because everyone was seeing it.
Yeah.
We got into the movie. We were sitting down, and I spilt my entire bag of Skittles, and I thought it was the greatest tragedy of all time.
So did you go back and get Skittles, or you just that was your fate?
That was it. I didn't have any more money. That was all my Skittle money.
That sucks, man. That was worse. That was a worse tragedy than the Titanic.
Exactly. That's my point.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I remember Titanic not being very good, but I mean, sure, won an award. Good for them.
All right. And of course, Jordan, it was on for 5 seasons, Sliders. So we've covered a lot of shows during that period of time on Continuum Drag.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make you guess which ones, but can you guess how many shows we've watched that ran during the 5 seasons of Sliders?
Ooh, I'm gonna guess 5 shows.
We have watched 19 things that were on the air during Sliders.
Holy moly! Wow, we've really covered this period, huh?
Maybe too much, some might say.
Wow. Well, I think it might just happen to do with that was a sci-fi or fantasy shows were just maybe very popular during this period.
I mean, I'm going to also take the mulligan that that is probably the era we're most nostalgic for. So obviously we're going to be inadvertently drawn to it. So
yeah. Well, speaking of nostalgia, I was drawn to Sliders.
And here is the IMDb summary for Season 1, Episode 1, Pilot. In a San Francisco basement, physics postgraduate student Quinn Mallory has found a way to create portals to parallel universes, inviting his physics professor, Maximilian Arturo, and his computer store colleague, Wade Wells, for a trip. A series of mishaps ropes in passing singer Rembrandt Brown and takes the Sliders off their planned route. And that slightly truncated summary was courtesy of Kevin Galley.
Well, Kevin, I think you've pretty much got it. I'm going to say something right off the bat that really has nothing to do with that synopsis, which is Rembrandt Crying Brown, who's played by, I don't know how to pronounce names. Is it Clevant or Clevant?
No, I'm not sure.
I think it's Clevant Derricks. I have to say, we've done this now. This is our 5th year doing this. He's essentially the comic relief in this show. For all intents and purposes, I'm sure they're going to delve more into the character as the show goes on. Already 1 episode in, he's my favorite comic relief of any comic relief character we've had in the 5 years of this show.
You know what? I think it's fair to say that. I think it's fair to say across the board, perfect casting.
Yeah, the cast is uniformly good, and it's sort of surprising because we've seen so many of these shows, and as you mentioned, 19 shows in this time period, and sometimes the casting is just so bland. But like Jerry O'Connell's great; he's such a watchable actor, and then you have like John Rhys Davies. It's like great, wonderful. It's great casting, and I have to say, what a strong pilot this is.
Yeah, even the woman who, I should know her name, but I don't have it here, who plays Wade Wells.
Sabrina Lloyd.
Yeah, a character that could not work or be just like a throwaway love interest. She brings so much more to the role than I think is like necessarily there. I think uniformly across the board, whoever cast this did a great job.
Yeah, agreed.
But the pilot gets underway, and I didn't remember this from watching it because I was a kid, but it has some real like 80s movies, Back to the Future vibes,
agreed.
Mixed with some real like comic book logic, like we're here for a fun time kind of vibes. Like the vibe of it was so interesting.
Yeah, I agree. The Back to the Future is clearly an influence, but it has this like, it's funny to see something back now 30 years later, because it's like, this is Back to the Future with a 90s vibe. You're like, that's okay. Is that interesting? Yeah, it's just, and it's almost anachronistic at this point because we're so far removed from that, but it does have that fun feel. I have to say, there's a weird, I don't know if it's quite a plot device, but we're going to see it right here in this first scene, which is Quinn has been, we're going to find out, he's your main character. He's been recording himself doing tests over time. And we see the character watching these tapes, which I thought was a really odd way of doing things, because wouldn't it have been just as effective and made it the same amount of time to just have him do the test? Like, why did we have, like, did that make sense of him doing a test and then we're watching a character watching him do a test?
Yeah, I think they wanted to avoid a montage, and they also wanted to avoid flashbacks. So they found a thing where it's like, he's already invented technology. Here's a quick shorthand to do it, and it's just him watching a videotape of himself doing it. There's no reason he would ever be watching it, but it's like,
Right.
I think it was their way of like dodging a couple of like tropes, I guess.
Yeah, because what's funny about it, and you're right, you don't really think about it too much, but at one point, I think this first thing he watches, literally nothing happens in the test. It's just him talking. So it's the equivalent of like opening your diary and reading it. You're like,
Yeah,
why?
absolutely.
Why would you do this? Yeah.
But yeah, he's a real boy genius. He's like maybe a teenager still, but he's clearly like in undergrads or something at university.
Yeah, I'd say he's probably very early 20s, if that. So he's probably about 20, 22. But this opening shot that you mentioned starts in his basement. I think we start in the basement and then we go to his bedroom. And I thought the directing did a great job of sort of building his character as it pans across his room, and you get a sense that yes, he's very intelligent, but he also maybe has this bit of arrested development. He's a little bit of
Yeah, he's got toys on the walls.
Exactly. Yeah. So you get the idea that he's, very smart in some ways, but maybe a little behind in others.
He's got a San Diego Sharks hockey stick.
San Diego Sharks, is that right? Do you think
comes
is
up
that the
twice.
minor?
Someone also says they've got tickets to see the San Diego Sharks, and I forgot. This is probably like a year after they debut, and I'm like, oh, remember when the San Diego Sharks were so hot with that logo of a shark biting a hockey stick?
Oh, San Jose.
Oh, San Jose. That's right. It's San Jose.
It's San Jose. Sorry, you know what's funny? I didn't even register that anyways. But yeah, San Jose, that was it was a funny thing because I think is also that like turquoise color. It was like everywhere. Everyone had that jacket.
It was a real hallmark of the 90s, or like a signpost of the 90s. That came out and everyone's just like, you got to get the cool Sharks jersey, man. It's got the shark biting a stick.
Yeah. So we see Quinn, he's jumping out of bed, he's got his cat.
We learned about his mom. She's got a sweet mom. He's got a dead dad. He's got the craziest laboratory. Like, this is where it's like a comic book. It's just like, you'd never have this laboratory, but it's just like crazy and fun and over the top.
And you know what? Very efficient, very quick with this. It's like you get who he is, you get the surrounding where we're going to be, and then you get the relationship with his mom. You find it very quickly. Not only that his dad died, but they sort of like they give you a little hint of the tone. They were like, the mom's like hassling about working too much, and she's like, "You're gonna die like your father." And he's like, "Dad got hit by a car." And I was like, "Oh wow!"
It's very quippy. It's very fun. There's lots of jokes. They're kind of moving along, like, and you get everything you need. Like, you see the basement. You see he's got a classic chalkboard with an equation he can't solve on it. Like, it's just like boom, boom, boom. This is Quinn Mallory. And they like from there they're just like, time to go to university. And you get to the university, immediately to class, and you meet Professor Maximilian Arturo. He's just like a physics professor. He's too smart. He's teaching the smartest kids, but they're like all like not. They're all lazy. He doesn't like them. Like he immediately establishes character like within the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, he's disappointed in the class because they're not as intelligent as him, and it's like it's a bother for him. You're right. They meet two characters, and you're like, great, we already get it. And then immediately we have him, Quinn, leave class and go to his job, which is, it's like what would you call it? It's like a Radio Shack, essentially, right?
Yeah, it's just a computer store, basically. They sell computer parts and sell computers. Like, it's a real like nerd hangout.
Yeah, and we meet the third character, Wade Wells, who they're sort of playing with a little bit in this episode. I have a feeling because of the length of the show they'll probably drop it a little bit, but they're sort of playing of like maybe a will they won't they love interest with her. But I love is there's like an extended scene here where she's talking about selling CDs, and it seems to go on indefinitely of them talking about the storage capability of CDs. I was like, man, if I've never seen a timestamp like that. I
will say they talked a lot of computer specs and like Pentium chips and all this stuff. I'm just like, we get it. You know what computers are. Move on.
That's funny. Yeah, but Quinn shows up. He's late for work. He's always late for work, and he's got a mean boss.
Yeah, his boss is not very smart, but he's mean.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's classic.
But like you were saying, this is just like the fastest, most efficient way. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think we're 15 minutes in, and they're just like first character, second character, third character. You get it? Great, let's go.
Yeah, it does everything you want for a pilot to do. It introduces the world, introduces the character. It almost right away also introduces their relationships. There's a little bit time for that, but it's like, let's just get into it. And I was actually timing this because with commercials, you said it was 2 hours, but it's an hour 27 when you actually watch it without commercials. And it is so efficient in terms of its acts that it's almost to the minute 30, 30, and 30 of the 3 acts for the show. And I was like, man, it's just like a writer's template of how to write a pilot.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about this more maybe when we're done. But like, I was just like, I feel like this pilot must have been floating around for a while, getting tweaked and tweaked because it is so tight. It feels like someone had been working on it forever.
I thought the exact same thing. It's funny. I was watching and going, how many drafts did this go through? Because it's so tight.
And now that they've established sort of these 3 main characters, it's now time to do the plot. Let's lay out what the plot of the show is. And Quinn comes home. We go down to his basement. He explains that he was trying to create an anti-gravity device in his basement. Instead, he created this strange swirling portal that opens into this world. Great VFX, by the way. Like, the portal looks good.
Agreed.
They walk around it so you can see all sides of it. Like, they did a nice job with this portal.
Well, now, I could be wrong. Do you think this is like an early CGI? No, not early. It's 1995, but I'm assuming this is sort of early days of computer generated stuff being on television.
Yeah, I would say so for sure. And it's definitely computer generated, I would say. I mean, if First Wave was doing it a few years later, they must have been too.
I would argue it weirdly looks better than some of the CGI I see in movies now.
It's solid. It's solid work for sure. I was just like, looks great. This looks like a movie's happening now. I love it.
Yeah, agreed.
What we see is he's been tossing stuff through the gate. None of it's been coming back. So he created a timer, which if he sets a time on it and he tosses like something through the gate, when the timer expires, the gate will open on the other side, suck it back. And it's a way for him to get back whatever he tosses in there, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I don't know if this entirely works and how they're going to fiddle with this over time, but I was like, that's enough. That's all you need to know.
It's comic book rules. The science of this is total comic book rules. I realized as I was watching them, they're just like, don't think about it, don't worry about it. Who cares?
Yeah, yeah. So, and you know what? You know what's funny? I wrote this note at this point where I was like, he makes a portal and jumps through. And again, I only vaguely remember this pilot, and my note was, I bet his dad's alive.
This is sort of the setup. He's like, this is how it all works. This is what I'm going to do. And he's just like, and I'm going to go through that portal now. First thing in the morning. And I was like, what? And there's like a cut, and it cuts from the basement to the basement. He's like, it's first thing in the morning. I'm going in. And I realized, I'm like, oh, from just a screenwriting perspective, it's like they didn't know how to do it. They needed him to just do it at the start of his day, because we knew what the start of his day always looks like. But it was just so funny. He's just like, and I'll do it in the morning. And it's like, cut. It's the morning. I'm like, okay.
And he does. So he sets his timer, jumps through the portal. By the way, I would never have done this, but that's why there's not a TV show about me, because there's no TV show about someone going, nah, next time. But he jumps through and he pops out, and where it seems to be is in his garage. So he's like,
he's back in the basement.
Yeah. Excuse me, the basement. I don't know why I wrote garage. In the basement. So he's like, the test is a failure. So he's like, well, I'll go on with my day. And he gets in the car, and this little plot device that we're going to see throughout the show is that to let you know things have changed, because you're going to realize that very quickly, there'll be either visual cues or audio cues. And in this case, it's he's in the car, and before he's only half paying attention, he's driving, and he hears on the radio them talk about global cooling. And this made me laugh because immediately I was like, oh no, this is going to be like, what's Star Trek's other universe called?
The Mirror Universe?
The Mirror Universe. It's like that, where it's like, this is not going to work. But anyways, it's just like, if you think about it too much, it doesn't work. But what we see very quickly is, yes, he has gone to a different dimension or world or universe, and everything is essentially reversed. And how he finds that out is the major first thing that happens is he almost gets in a car accident because the lights are reversed. I like that everything they've decided in driving is exactly the same, but the red, yellow, and green are reversed. Not the side you drive on the car, and not the where the wheel is on the car, or anything else, just the lights. That's reversed.
Yeah, it was a real Superman Bizarro world. Like, it's like bad bye is what they said to each other.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I will note, I wrote down a few points because that's the whole thing. It's like, it's in a place, everything's just the opposite. And like, there's a radio host he's listening to, a real shock jock. And here's all the things the shock jock tells him are different. You mentioned global cooling. He says that CDs are being taken off the market because vinyl rules and no one wants CDs.
I agree. I agreed with that. Vinyl does rule.
Jack Kennedy is still the president, planning another run for presidency, and is married to Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah. So real quick, I know there's a couple other things you're going to say. I don't know how this, I get it was fun to sort of feel like it's a different universe, but how do things being opposite have these, like, it doesn't quite jive, right? It's like being opposite doesn't mean John F. Kennedy would still be president.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily opposite. It's more they're just like, this world's so crazy, isn't it? It's got all these things you recognize.
Yeah. Anyways, Mexico's complaining about U.S. citizens coming in.
A lot of illegal immigration from America to Mexico.
Yeah.
And of course, the big payoff, when he slams on his brakes, he looks out his window, and Elvis is still doing a show in Vegas. He's quite elderly now, though.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting that, I don't know if it's still so much in TV, but it seems like a weird trope to always be like, and Elvis is alive.
It's a classic, I guess. I mean, certainly for this era, I suppose.
Yeah, but so he's all very confused, and he goes home, and this is my favorite thing of the thing that's different, is he goes home, and he's like, something's different. His mom opens the door, and she looks a little bit different. I think her hair is different, and she's pregnant with the gardener's baby, Jake. I don't know why that was so amusing to me, but in this world, the gardener's got his mom pregnant.
It was just so funny because they hadn't introduced the gardener before. And
I know.
His mom comes out and she's pregnant with a man, and then he is so judgmental. He's like, "You let the gardener impregnate you?" I'm like, "What's wrong with the gardener?"
I thought it was great.
I will make one little note because it was a weird cameo that I think was probably not entirely meant to be like super noticed, but like the radio shock jock who's always on the radio, I immediately recognized his voice.
Who was that?
It was Harry Shearer from The Simpsons.
Oh, I didn't catch it. Oh, that's funny.
And I was just like, this is definitely a Fox like tie-in, or like just like they got someone to come in. I was like, it's very funny to hear Harry Shearer doing this radio voice.
Right. But anyways, the timer hits 15 minutes. He gets sucked back into the portal, and he's back to his basement. So now he realizes the test actually is a success, or at least I don't think that's what he was originally trying to do, but he realizes it works to some capacity, that it sends you to different places.
Yeah. He took the portal. It took him somewhere. It's insane.
Oh, and I'm going to make a weird little note that the interior of his house is so clearly a set, and I don't know why I liked it so much. I just liked it. There was something very nostalgic about it. I'm like, this looks right. This is what TV is supposed to look like. It's a set.
Yeah, I mean, it looks big. It looks like a big movie's happening.
Yeah, exactly.
At any rate, he's back. He races to school to tell Professor Arturo about his discovery. But when he gets there, Arturo's super pissed off at him and like storms out of the classroom. And all the other students are shocked that Quinn would show his face back here again. And I gotta say, Quinn's kind of stupid, right? Quinn's like a slow man.
Quinn is, I think what they're sort of playing is that, again, it's that split in intelligence. He's very good at science and math and figuring out stuff, but his awareness of what is happening in terms of like interpersonal relationships is lacking.
Yeah, he cannot figure out what this is about. So then he, obviously, as we've seen, because it's a mirror of the opening of the show, he goes to work then. When he gets there, Wade takes him to the side and says, "Dude, you were here an hour ago and the boss fired you." And Quinn still is unable to understand what's happening. He's just like, do I have brain damage? Did I come to work an hour ago and like ruin my job somehow?
I think we're maybe, and I don't know how effective this is, but the sense I got is that you were supposed to, and maybe Quinn is supposed to, me maybe even thinking maybe he didn't come back and maybe this world is weird too because of everyone's acting oddly. Is that what we're supposed to think?
No, I mean, I think we, the audience, are supposed to know because it's so obvious that like when Quinn left, another Quinn arrived, like just like happened to him. And they want to save that reveal for Quinn. Like they want to have a fun joke of it. So they're really delaying Quinn's sussing out the mystery, which is fun and funny, like in comic book rules, but it is very funny. Like, I'm just like, Quinn is like obviously maybe not the sharpest tool in the shed. Right.
And there's also this little, I wouldn't even call it like a C plot. It's like a J plot that Wade and him kissed.
Yes. When his doppelganger showed up.
yeah, Doppelganger shows up, kisses her. Now she's sort of like, wow, that was something. And he's, again, sort of this like somewhat dopey kind of guy. He's like, did we kiss? But you're my buddy. And she's like offended at that. Clearly has like a crush on him, and he just doesn't get it.
It's even better than that, because we've seen this in shows before where like one character secretly in love with another character, and like, you know, that the other character makes some sort of comment like, I think of you like a brother more than anything, you know. It's like supposed to be a tragic, heartbreaking thing, but the line here is, she's like, we kissed, and he's like, Quinn's like, Wade, we'd never kiss, that'd be like incest. And like the look on her face is so heartbreaking. I really was like, this this actor's just crushing it right here.
Yeah. So what we, as you said, what we really understand is that clearly there's another version of Quinn. He's also sliding, as we're going to find out, and he's been kind of messing things up a little bit.
Yeah, and when Quinn gets home, he immediately discovers the doppelganger in his basement. And not only is the doppelganger there, he's also solved the equation that Quinn could never solve. And at this point, I 100% believe Quinn is the dumb version of himself. Like, we are now meeting the smart version of Quinn, but our adventures are going to be with the dumber version of him.
Yes, it's funny because they do imply that. Like, so he says he coined the term slider. He's on his 8th slide. And although I realized at one point, I'm like, he's been doing these for a long time if he's only on his 8th one. Because, yes, you do get the idea that he is far ahead of the Quinn we're going to spend time with.
Well, he's just like, I can't believe you didn't solve the equation, even though you built the machine. He's like, I figured you'd get there eventually, so I solved it for you. And I was just like, no, this Quinn would have never figured it out on his own, I guarantee you.
Yeah. And I think Jerry O'Connell does a good job here, because you get this more confident version of the same character, slightly more arrogant character, also just a little bit dismissive. He's just like, he's just like, yeah, I solved the math. He's like, oh yeah, I've also been married for 2 years, which also begs to question why he was kissing Wade. But regardless,
yeah, immediately that red flag got up for me too. I'm like, even if Wade is your wife in the other world, what's happening?
yeah.
I have a question though.
Yeah.
Do you think this Quinn is just sliding to different worlds to cheat on his wife?
Yeah, I do. He's having a great time. Well, because he said he's been married for 2 years, but there's no implication, or he doesn't imply at all, that she's with him.
I know, it's very funny. I will say this too. He says this is like his 8th slide, I think. Yeah. And he's just like, you won't believe how fun sliding is, the term I coined. He's just like, I've been to some amazing places. And do you remember what his example of the best place he went to was?
I can't remember what it was. What was it?
He's just like, it's amazing. I went to a world where the Cubs won the World Series 3 times.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And then after that, he's like, oh yeah, I also went to a utopia once. Like, wait, what?
He's a big Cubs fan. That was more important.
But at any rate, this doppelganger Quinn, his timer's going off, his slide gate, his slide wormhole's opening up, and in real classic like this kind of like adventure fashion, as he's being sucked in, he's like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, don't do this one thing. But before he can get it out of his mouth, he's sucked through the wormhole.
Yeah, I know. I would have started with that, but it's fine. It leaves that little bit of like, uh-oh, there's something they shouldn't be doing.
It's real comic book rules here. Like, as soon as you accept that, you're just like, I got it. I see what I'm on board for.
Yeah, it reminded me a little bit of like Gremlins or something, right? It's like, here's the Mogwai, but don't feed him after midnight. You're like, oh, I see what's going to happen here.
And we cut to Arturo and Wade show up at Quinn's house at the same time, because they're just moving. They're just like, don't waste any time. They both get there.
I love that, like, but this is one of the flimsier thing of the show. They're just like, why are they there? He's like, I heard he was going to apologize to me. I'm like, okay, sure. You'd go to his house for that? Yeah, sure. It was fine.
Yeah, we just need you here. They get in there. He demos the portal for them. They're all very impressed. They're like debating whether they should use it. Like the kids want to go on adventures. Arturo's like, maybe we should study it. But, Quinn's just like, let's go. Let's go on one 5-hour adventure, which, that seems like too long for your second adventure.
I agree. I thought he'd set it for like a half an hour.
And I'm just like, all right, sure, why not? And we go from this moment where it's like, they're getting ready. They're like, we're going to do it. And like, we're going to go on this adventure. And then we hard cut. We're probably a half an hour in now?
Yeah.
And they're like,
30 minutes in.
Let's meet the 4th character of the show.
Yeah, it was a weird way of doing it. But I guess because they have to have, they've decided that these 3 characters kind of know each other. Although I don't know how Wade and Arturo know each other, but sure. but they want to have this other sort of character who isn't in their world. And it's so far my favorite character. Every single time he has something funny to do, I laughed. And it's Rembrandt Crying Man Brown, and he's a singer who was part of a group. What was the group's name? Did you write it down?
I believe they're the Tops.
Yeah, I think something like that. The Tops. And they're sort of like a classic, like late '60s, early '70s kind of R&B group.
Yeah, they become a Detroit for sure, like a Detroit R&B group.
Yeah, and he was the lead singer, and I like that he's the crying man. We get a good, at the very end of the episode, over credits, we get to see like the full music video, and he has a very like, that's his style of singing. It's like really like he's crying. And he's basically, what we find out is that was kind of his heyday. He has not been doing that well since, and he's very excited about what he thinks will be his comeback. But what we find out very quickly is that his comeback is just that he's been asked to sing the national anthem at a baseball game.
Yes, he's going to do the Giants game. And I want you to answer this question for me because I didn't fully understand. But he's getting dressed. He's putting on this very like flashy tuxedo. And he tells his manager that he has a new look. It's a very 90s look. And he comes out and he has like 5 ribbons pinned to his lapel. Like, you know, like a cancer ribbon you might wear. Yeah. Why is that very 90s?
Here's what I assumed, because it stumped me too. What I think is that was the beginning of what has become a very commonplace with politicians and public figures of, you know, wearing the flag on their lapel or whatever that. It's the idea of visually showing to someone, you might even say like virtue signaling of, look, I'm supporting a cause, but really just visually doing that. And so I think that was kind of like a little joke of like, everyone in the 90s now is just like supporting something. So he's supporting 5 things, but he's not actually doing it. It's just the visual representation of the ribbon. I think that's the joke they're doing.
Yeah, I was just like, I don't understand. Why is this very 90s? But then maybe that was it.
I think that's what it is. Anyways, but yeah, that's like, it's a weird little gag.
Anyway, so he's excited. He's going to go sing the anthem. He hops in his car. I was shocked, though. I'm sure you were blown away, too. You must have fallen out of your chair. But, like, he has the same license plate as you?
You know what's so funny? I knew you were going to do that. I knew you were going to say that. I watched it. I was like, Luca's going to mention this about the license plate. I knew it.
Well, it's a very distinctive license plate you have.
That's true. That's true. What is it?
Crying Man.
Crying Man. Yeah. Yeah.
You just want everybody to know you're crying a lot.
You know what? I'll tell you. I love Rembrandt. I love his old convertible. I love his Crying Man license plate. I like, weirdly, also how much of the show dedicates to him driving to the gig. You really get the sense like he's got to go a long way and he's just by himself. I like that. Like, he doesn't even have anyone pick him up for this. And it's while you're cutting back and forth is how they've decided to do this, is while the other characters are deciding whether they're going to slide and have this adventure, he's just trying to get to work.
Yeah. I also like he's going to a baseball stadium. So theoretically, almost certainly located next to a major thoroughfare. Like, you'd have to have highways to get there. He's driving down highways for most of his journey because we keep cutting back to him. And then very abruptly, he's driving down a suburban street past Quinn's house.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like you're saying, it's comic book logic. It doesn't matter.
And it's at this moment that Quinn's just like, they're talking about going on the adventure. And they're like, oh, can we all jump through this portal in front of us? And Quinn's just like, I don't know. I guess I should turn up the power. And Arturo's immediately like, uh-oh. And I'm just like, oh, don't let the dumb Quinn do this, as it'll go badly.
Yeah, I do like, though, it's funny. Like you said before, it's like 5 hours seems a little long. It's like, yeah, it seems like there's a lot of testing they should do as opposed to just like, hey, it worked one time. I don't know. Let's just make the portal stronger. I was like, okay, guys, sure. Let's do it.
Well, what we're seeing is they're on the dumb Earth, slightly dumber Earth.
Yeah. So, but you do have that little push and pull because I think we said Arturo, Maximilian Arturo, he basically wants to study it. And they're like, no, let's have fun. And he's like, all right, I like fun too.
Yeah, and this overpowered portal, it shoots out, it sucks 3 of them in, and it flies out of his basement into the street, and of course sucks up poor Rembrandt as he's driving by.
And his car. It's
and
that
his
big.
Car. Everybody's going.
Yeah.
Which begs the question, because that portal travels through, I think, a bulletin board and most of like the ground outside. It doesn't suck any of that up, but it does take Rembrandt's car with him.
Yeah, I know. It's just like, sure, it's fine. But we do a hard cut there too. Rembrandt driving, like continuing driving, but he sort of loses control and crashes into what almost looks like an iceberg. Like it's just like it's a just a winter world.
They're just in a post-apocalyptic Iceland.
Yeah, and so all the characters wake up in sort of different spots. Obviously because they went through a portal in different spots, so it shot them out in different areas. The other characters, 3 characters, are back in his basement. But you can see it's like full of cobwebs and it's very cold. And they're just they go, well, they know they're somewhere different because it just looks so visually different.
Yeah, and essentially they quickly learn, like, everyone on this Earth's dead. Something awful happened. They don't know what, but now it's like the Ice Age. And they find Rembrandt, and they're kind of just stuck in this debate. They're like, should we force a slide home, or do we stay here for 5 hours? They're not really sure what to do. Quinn's just like, oh yeah, that other doppelganger said that I shouldn't do something, but I don't know what, so I don't know what we should do.
I did like the idea, though, that they're like, let's go on an adventure. 5 hours is enough to have an adventure. And then they like, not really even considering that the chance you have of going to a horrible place is just as good as you going to an awesome place, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's very funny. It's just like, oh, you guys.
Yeah, so they basically make the what ends up happening is they're all in the car kind of having this discussion, and they're going back and forth. We could just wait for a few hours in this car, or we're at least a little bit warm in here. And then what you see is Rembrandt rolls down his window and sees what I guess is a big tornado.
Yeah,
right?
Just a classic ice tornado.
Weather has been so messed up here because of, I don't know, whatever has happened to the world, that everything is bad. Just the weather is terrible, and this tornado is coming to them and starting to suck them. So it's like they need to make the decision right away, and they do go, let's just jump.
Yeah, we can't stay here and be sucked. We got to get out of here.
Yeah, so Quinn hits his controls, and they slide out again.
Yeah, and this time they land on on Earth, and we'll come to learn it's a new Earth. They don't know right away, but they do notice something's wrong initially, because usually you land in the place you jumped from, and so they should be returning to the front of Quinn's house. But this time they're landing in a public park near the university, and they're like, well, that's a little off. But of course, Rembrandt needs to get to the game, so he runs off and hops in a taxi cab. Wade, for some reason, says, I've been gone for about 40 minutes from my house. I better go call home. And she walks off to find a payphone.
Yeah, I know. There's a couple things to like. They just need to separate people, and you're like, all right. And then I like, in a little bit of a telling line, Quinn's like, it's a little bit dull to be home, am I right?
I know that, and they're like, too bad we broke the controller on that jump. I'm like, you did?
Yeah, they said, they go, oh, the preset controls are shorted. I'm like, okay.
Sure. But of course, it's at this moment that Quinn and Arturo turn around to look at the statue in the park, and Arturo's just like, isn't that statue usually Abraham Lincoln?
Yeah, I know it's Lenin.
Yes, it is communist world. They've landed in commie Earth.
Yeah, and I have to say, some of this is that's where we're going to be for the rest of this episode.
Yeah.
We're
let's have a conversation about the premise of this Earth for a second.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say. This is the second act, and we're going to learn about this essentially communist-controlled United States. Some of it's a little bit hokey. Some of it is like almost just based on like no research about communism or countries under these sorts of rules. And it's like some of it gets into like Rocky IV sort of like communism. But I was just like, it's fun. I'll allow it.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think there's a draft of this pilot where they went to Nazi America?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Because this feels like a direct skin. Like everything is mostly Nazi, but they just said it's communism.
Yeah, because that's the thing. There's they've said it almost like this has taken place right after World War II and the Nazis have won. That's what you basically get. Like, because at first they do a couple of jabs that are like kind of fun. Like it's the people's telephone. And there's a couple, and there's a couple
the dollar
like things
bills
like,
are red, and I think is Gorbachev on it or is Yeltsin on the dollar bill?
Yeah, so I didn't see who it was, but it was something like that. And there's some actual fun little things they do about like people informing on each other and things like that, like this sort of Stalin era of communism. I thought was pretty well done. But you are right. It's a you said it very well. It's a skin on top of fascism, which let's not get into the weeds of this, but like those two things don't coalesce at all. Those are two very different governments you could have.
Did you like at the very beginning of the show? What we see is that we see a homeless man who's presented as crazy, screaming about American imperialism and how communism is the better way. And then in this world, he's a famous politician. And then later they'll go back to their Earth and be like, he's back to being homeless again, just like he should be.
I know. It was so funny. And it was almost the end of the episode. They're like, back to normal. Where homeless people are homeless.
Where communists live on the streets like they should.
Yeah. But yes, but this world, I think for the most part, it functions.
It makes it fresher. It freshens up the Nazi world idea, which you've seen a million times.
Yeah. And again, I kind of had wished they had played a little bit more into the sort of possibility of the paranoia that would happen if the Cold War had extended and the Soviet Union had taken over more of the world and things were operating a little bit more under that sort of system. I think there's a little bit more they could play with. It's maybe too much to ask for the show about people jumping into different dimensions, and I think it's probably enough to have these kind of funny little jokes. Like, I'm telling you, the People's Court thing we're gonna find, I can't believe how funny that was and how well done that was. And that made me laugh and laugh. So there's little things that I think were done really well. It's enough to get you through.
No, I think you're right. I think there are a few bits that are quite entertaining. There are pieces of it, I think you're right, they're a bit cringy. There's like, how's this work? Like, I'll tell you, the listener, right now, which they shouldn't have done, first of all, is they really make an attempt to explain how this happened historically.
Agreed. Yeah.
That makes no sense
after the Korean War, right?
Yeah. The U.S. lost the Korean War, which they did already. Like, they did. They didn't win the Korean War.
Yeah, I know.
And that stalemate, for some reason, with not the non-stalemate, with Russia winning the Cold War, which Russia wasn't fighting, caused the America to take on the trajectory of the USSR. So they were eventually isolated and collapsed on their own, like the USSR did on the world that Quinn and everyone is from, except that in their world, the U.S. didn't invade America after the USSR collapsed. So it's just, like, none of it really... They tried to explain how it's exactly like their world, but like America's USSR. But I'm like, none of the things that are happening in this world happened on your world.
I know. And it's like, they don't need to explain it, I think, to your point. But if they could have just been as different as like, in the 1930s, when communism was seen in the United States as an actual, maybe viable option, people took that option, and history then, that's the trajectory we had. It could be that simple, but I guess that's maybe not as meaty or is not as exciting a thing as dropping in things that people know. Hey, remember that war you guys know about, you kids? Korean War? Guess what? We lost. Then things changed. It's like, it's that idea of, the butterfly wings, right?
Yeah.
But I think your point, I don't know if you're right. It doesn't quite work, and I don't know if they need it to, but whatever. It's, again, this show, you're just like, yeah, that's enough. It's good enough.
No, I mean, I think for sure we've figured it out when I'm sure there was an original draft where these were Nazis, and then someone was just like, freshen it up, and they're like, and communism had probably just collapsed, and they're like, great.
Yeah, because also you're going to see later on, it's weird how they've shown this world, and I think to your point of this clearly being from an earlier draft, which is you're going to see things just done a little bit differently, which I thought was really well done. But then later on, we're going to see, like, I guess it's supposed to look like East Berlin, and it's like right after war, and like things are on fire, and there's like guards shooting people and stuff. And I was like, why are people living in this society like this? Like, that's not what the communism was. It wasn't like this, right?
Yeah, during the day, it looks like it's a fully functioning society that's been like this forever. And for some reason at night, it's burning cars in the apocalypse.
Yeah, it's suddenly like old Detroit from RoboCop. I'm like, this doesn't jive at all.
Anyway, we'll get back to the plot now. Rembrandt, who got in that cab, he gets into trouble because on the cab ride, he gives the cabbie a US dollar bill. And of course, the US dollar's not in circulation anymore. These red rubles are in circulation.
Yeah, so seemingly he had a dollar from the Korean War was what, 1952, something like that. So it's like he's been holding this for, this is 1995, so 40 years he's been holding that dollar. I
think he just had a dollar on him, and he just like, I mean, they should have been like, what is this? Is this counterfeit money? They wouldn't have recognized it.
That was my point. They, instead of them going, this is clearly an American dollar, they should have been like, well, what is this, Monopoly money?
Yeah. He's arrested by the secret police, and he's dragged off to be basically interrogated by the KGB in this weird group interrogation room.
Yeah. And again, this is the stuff I thought was well done. This idea of everyone being on a very heightened sense of turning someone else in, and everyone being very careful to not get themselves in trouble. I thought that was well done, better than the other stuff, which is like, yeah, I don't know what they're trying to do.
Yeah. And they're like, we know you're not Rembrandt Brown because he died 12 years ago during the Detroit riots. And we need to know who you are because we're trying to find this U.S. imperialist underground that's disturbing the peace, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
And we didn't talk about this, but we see his interrogator who's interrogating him. And we'd actually seen this character earlier on back on his Earth. He's like a real Saul Goodman style TV personal injury lawyer, which I love that commercial because it cuts. He's just like, I helped this guy get a claim, get $1 million. And it cut to a guy and he's just like, I was relaxing on the job and an anvil fell on my head.
Yeah. And so, yeah, you're right. This Saul Goodman character of this like slightly sleazy lawyer. But we see in this world, he is being transformed into essentially a KGB interrogator.
Yeah. And Rembrandt recognizes him from the TV. And like all the interrogators are upset. They're like, how does he know your identity? No one should know who we are in here. Well, we've got to ship him off to the people's court and like get rid of him because he's clearly some sort of like guy with a lot of information he shouldn't have. And you've teased the people's court, and we won't get into it now. We'll come back to it. But this is kind of where Rembrandt's plot goes for the next like little bit.
Yeah. And again, I have to say, every scene with Rembrandt, I'm just like, let's just stay with him. I would watch the show, which is Rembrandt just on his own. Sliding through worlds. I loved it. He's funny. All his lines land. I think he's just a funny he's a nervous character who's sort of just, it's not even so much that he's in it for himself. He's just trying to get where he wants to get. This whole thing, like, he's just like, guys, I got a gig. This is so important to me. And it's just, I just like that feeling of frustration that he has, and it's done in a funny way. And I think the actor really nails it. Yeah,
the actor's doing great. I actually do really like him. He just perpetually calls Quinn Egghead. He's just like, Egghead, shut up.
Yeah. So, but we go back to the other characters, and again, it's a little bit over the top. We have like people getting taken away by the KGB, great, but then there's just like guards just shooting people on the street. I was like, what? In this like burning wasteland, and again, in a very similar scene as to what just happened with Rembrandt, Arturo, which was such a funny scene. He's just like, all right, guys, I don't know what to do, but I think we need to eat. And they're like, you could eat at a time like this? He's like, absolutely. Hot dog vendor it is. So he goes over to a hot dog vendor and wants a sausage. And in a funny kind of character thing that I don't think quite works with his character, because he's a very intelligent, very cautious, pedantic sort of character, he gives a dollar bill to the an American dollar bill to the,
just like Rembrandt.
Yeah, just like Rembrandt, to the hot dog vendor, except this part, the hot dog vendor sort of gives him like a wink and a nod, and he's like, I see what you are. And very quickly, we realize this guy's part of this American resistance, and he takes him, which makes me laugh, quite literally underground.
Yes, to the secret base, because the hot dog vendor's like, hey, I recognize you. You're Wade Wells, our commander who was captured by the communists. I can't believe you escaped. And so we know Wade Wells is a very important person in this world.
Yeah. That's right. And she's sort of like chuffed about it. She's like, that's right.
And yes, they go to this secret underground base, Jordan, and then your mind must have been blown as they walked into this base and they met the man who's running the base, who immediately kisses Wade.
Why would I be blown away?
Because it's Joshua, the Gua from First Wave.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even recognize him.
It's the same actor. He's there. He's kissing Wade immediately. I'm just like, Joshua's here too.
It's so funny. I didn't even clock that was him. Isn't that crazy?
It's very funny. I was just like, what a weird coincidence.
But yes, we find out that this character and Wade in this world were lovers or partners, and these sort of freedom fighters together.
Yeah. And essentially Wade is able to explain the whole situation to them about sliding and being from a different world. And it's very funny because the other characters are kind of locked up while they're figuring this out, and they let them free, and Wade's just like, don't worry, I worked it all out. I explained what was happening. And I think Quinn's just like, why did they believe you? And Joshua says, he's like, Oh, because Wade's a very different lover than my Wade. So like, I knew you guys weren't from this world.
Yeah, and then she like gives like a like and then it's the first time we get like a little bit of perhaps jealousy from Quinn. He's like, "Whoa, what do you mean? What do you mean? How she's a very different lover?"
And Wade's just like, check it out, I'm hot.
Yeah, but I do like the idea though that because they don't really explicitly say is that what happened, but if it is the case, so this guy Wade knows that she's very much like the other Quinn. She's just like, I'm going to go into the world and have sex with someone without them really knowing who I am. It's a little bit creepy.
That is true.
You know?
I think really what we're supposed to think is that first kiss was different, but they do linger, so it's very funny.
Yeah. And we get the little history and stuff here. I think the one part I bet you enjoyed, though, was when they come across their old boss.
Yes,
who
of course.
Who is a lower ranking, and so Wade is quite pleased about it. But what's he watching, Luke?
He's watching Soviet hip hop.
My feeling was this would be up your alley. This would be something you'd like listening to.
It really made me laugh. I believe they're singing about how the individual is evil and that the collective good needs to work to get grain.
Yeah. So now this is one of those things where it's a little bit hokey and it's done for laughs, but I think it makes more sense than some of the other things we've seen, like the people just getting shot in the street and stuff. This is a little bit funnier of like, what would be slightly different, like if it's music that is being commissioned by the government, maybe this is what it would be more sound like.
Yeah,
I thought,
what would pop culture look like in this world?
Exactly. I kind of wish there was a little bit more of that, and I think when they do land on those, it's a little bit better.
Well, I know this is your favorite part for sure, because
it is.
Then they
absolutely.
changed the channel, and the terrible thing we thought Rembrandt was being dragged off to, the People's Court, is in fact a TV show, The People's Court.
And it made me laugh because it also brought me back to my childhood, because they actually got Judge Wapner, who was the host at that time. He is the judge on it too. And I just thought they've shot it like an episode. All the people who are in the show, even the guy at the end who interviews Rembrandt after the case, is exactly how they used to do it on People's Court. And I'm sure People's Court's still in the air and it's still done in the same way. But it made me laugh. And the play on words of People's Court I thought was clever. It was funny. It was well executed. And Judge Wapner's great. Everything about it was great.
Comrade Wapner?
Comrade Wapner. It was great. And he basically, in another scene that made me laugh with Rembrandt, actually I laughed out loud, they basically talk about how he should be charged because he gave this money and stuff. And he goes, all right, I'm going to sentence you for treason, 15 years in the gulag. And Rembrandt goes, did you say $15? And it made me laugh because it was so in his character and the timing was so great. I thought it was just such a funny scene. Overall, like that whole sequence was wonderful.
Yeah, that's the highlight of the episode. That People's Court sequence was like the fun and games really work.
Yeah, and it's like, again, when you can see, it's funny in pilots because some things are going to work, some things are not going to work, and you're going to see characters might have traits that are going to be accentuated later on or dropped, and this is one of these things where I hope that the show leans into in future episodes because they really nailed it.
Anyway, yes, he's charged with treason. He's going to go to the gulag, and they're watching it all on TV, and it just so happens that Rembrandt will be held in the same prison as the communist world's Commander Wade Wells. So it's the perfect opportunity to rescue them both. And not only is the opportunity so good that they're in the same prison, but on this world, the prison is actually their old university that was converted. And it's Evil Warden? Why, Arturo is the Evil Warden on this world.
Yeah. Which, again, it's very much like the Mirror Universe in Star Trek. You're just like, sure, that all works. That all makes sense. But I had a question for you. So we basically now we're done Act 2. We're going to the Act 3 that they've got to get Rembrandt out and get home is basically what we have to do. And at the same time, somehow save things or start more of a revolution from this American underground. Here's what I didn't understand. Was their whole goal just to get Wade, or was it a larger thing? Because the one guy says at one point to the Wade we know, this is the most important thing. If this doesn't fail, this whole rebellion is going to collapse. And I thought, in what way is that true?
Yeah, it is weird. They do say like it's on the verge of collapse and they just need to get Wade Wells out because she's such a great commander. But I also was just like, I don't see how that saves the rebellion.
Yeah, like, because it was weird because we'll talk about it, but at the very end, all they really do is that they make it like a big thing. Is a guy takes a bazooka at the end and he shoots just just like the toll booth to get into the university. I was like, okay, that was what the rebellion. That was the whole point. Just that it wasn't even like he blew up the main building. He blew up this tiny little box.
No, it's very simple. For the Sliders, it's get Rembrandt. For the American Revolution, it is just to get Wade Wells out. That's it. There's no other stakes.
Right. But it doesn't, it seems though that they are setting it more, but I thought the same thing. I was like, I guess they're just getting Wade. So, okay.
Well, not to spoil it, but obviously it all goes more or less well. And then later they'll be standing around. They'll be like, well, I think you've inspired us by telling us that communism fell on your world. So it gives us hope that we can make it fall here. And I'm just like, no, it's the leading political thing. It's not going to just collapse on its own here.
Well, and also it's like, I don't know why we're kind of jumping a little bit, but why they even needed to have the characters instill this bit of change in people. I'm like, they don't have to. It could be like they got to a world, they make no a change in it. They're just trying to get home. And that's it. They don't need to like adjust society. Why?
It's a note, I think, just be like, it needs to be a happy ending where America might be democratic again.
Right. But where we are right now is there's a kind of funny scene where they're like, all right, our Maximilian Arturo, you're going to dress up as this warden. We're all going to also dress up as these communist troops. And they give Quinn a gun. And they go to the university / prison. And there's an extended scene of Max trying to be the character.
It's a classic.
Yeah, it's like he has to be the character of this other version of himself, but he doesn't have the information, so he's got to dance a little bit, and he mostly does well.
Yeah, and I would just like to note, it's a fun scene. The actor, what's his name, Darby Davis, whatever it is.
Yeah,
he has fun with it. It's, you've seen it a million times where they just like the guard's like, what about this? And he has to like say the wrong thing and then backtrack on it.
Yeah.
I was just like, it's fun to watch him do it, and it's all the same. And the guards let them through. And then for some reason, which I actually liked, is they put a twist on the scene where as soon as the guard lets them drive through, he like picks up the phone. He's like, I don't believe that for 2 seconds. He like immediately calls up someone just like, something's happening here. This is clearly wrong.
I agree. It's like things are suspicious and they talk their way. And they're like, wow, we got through it. And it's like, no, you didn't. The guy was just playing you as well. I thought that was well done.
And like this ends up being kind of a nice, and maybe this is just part of what happened with a rewrite or something, but this prison break scene is mercifully quick. Like they get past the gate, they immediately get Rembrandt out. It's like not even like cut, Rembrandt's out of a prison cell. Cut, the alarm's going off. A big action sequence, which, whatever. This is maybe its weakest moment. Like the action sequence isn't as big as it needs to be because it's for TV, but like big gunfight, explosions, lots of extras, but it's never going to look perfect on TV. And they essentially escape with with Rembrandt and get away. And as they're driving off, Wade goes to say, Quinn turns to Wade and says, "We did it, Wade." And then Wade drops dead next to him.
Yeah, that's right. She drops dead, and you're like, "Oh no!" And then so he gets really upset that he's like, "Pull over the car," which I like. They're like maybe like 30 seconds to like a minute away from they've just all this destruction they've had. I'm like, maybe don't pull over right here. But anyways, they pull over. She seems dead. He's really upset. And just then our Wade shows up and is like, "I'm not dead." And he's like, "Oh, good. It's just the other version of you that exists in this world. Who cares about her?" And also the whole West Coast Rebellion or whatever it's called was waiting on her to be their savior. So anyways, don't worry about that.
You didn't buy this for a second, right? Like as soon as you saw she was hurt, I was like, this isn't real.
Well, I'll say this, and I'm curious to know how it will work out in later episodes because I don't remember, but I'm assuming they're going to fall back on this multiple times where you think a character is dead, but it's actually the other version of the character. I actually think it's not a great tool for them because I think it's too easy to lean on, and I also think once you've seen it once, you've blown it for the audience.
Yeah, I would say this whole because this whole third act here where they have to do the prison break and the fake out with Wade, this is the weakest part of the entire episode. It's just like it's fast. Agreed. It's kind of pointless. It's not like it's supposed to be the exciting action finale, but like, were you excited? I wasn't.
I agree. It's again, I was watching it. I was watching the time on it, and again, it's organized very well the way the script is and how it's executed. the last 30 minutes are the worst part of the show, and it's the action part. And you would think it would be the most exciting point and the culmination of everything we've built towards, but it feels kind of tagged on, and it feels like they're like, we need an action scene where it wasn't really needed. And I think it probably, in weird ways, would have been more effective if it had been a little bit quieter, because I think it wouldn't have shown the sort of budgetary restraints of having this big fight and stuff. And also, we didn't really build to a big fight, so it wasn't needed. And I just don't think that's where the strength of the show is. The strength of the show is these performers are really good. The funny little differences in the world and how they respond to it. That's where the show seems strong, at least in this pilot. So this action show, I was like, is that what this show is? Does it need to be an action show?
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, that kind of gets us to basically the end of that. They've rescued everyone they need to rescue. The American Revolution is going to continue somehow, some way.
For reasons, yeah.
And they have rebuilt the timer so they can go home. And of course, they jump back and they're like, I think we fixed all the problems. We should be jumping back home. And when they get back to the Earth they think they're from, everything looks good at first, as you'd expect.
Yeah.
Lincoln is a statue again. The gate to the house still squeaks. The cabbie who drives them home, he's not a communist now. He actually loves the albums of the Crying Man.
That's right. Yeah, and Arturo's great. Not Arturo. Rembrandt's great again. He's just happy that someone recognized him. I thought it was very funny.
Yeah. And they go home. The mom's happy to see Quinn. She's been worried about him. They all sit down to have a big meal and discuss whether they're going to have more adventures or whether they need to do more study. And, you know, as you wrote in your first note of when you were watching at the beginning, Quinn's dead dad walks in the room and you're like, it's not over.
Yeah. Which I mean, you see coming because, you know, there's more adventures. I thought it was well done, and I thought it was seeded.
It was well executed, yeah.
So it's like, and it's great. And it literally, it ends with Quinn being so shocked that he drops his glass of wine. That's the last shot you get. And then we go to the credits, and as I mentioned, we get to see the full music video of Rembrandt with his the Spinning Tops. I wrote it down. That's his group, the Spinning Tops. And it made me laugh. And I was like, you know what? What a strong pilot. Not perfect. It's got some issues, but really, really strong. I would say, if not the strongest pilot we've seen, at least one of them, where it does everything you need it to do. The characters get introduced. Their relationships are introduced. What the show is going to be like every week. The world they're going to be in. Even that it's going to be a different world, that is set. I think it does everything you need to do. And it's like, I think as a viewer, especially in 1995, and seeing us out, it's still sort of positively remembered, as you're like, I do want to go on other adventures with these people. Yeah,
I agree. It understands the fun and games it wants to do. It's tightly packed. So you kind of know what you're going to get on these adventures. And I appreciated the ending. Like it's kind of an abrupt ending. He drops the wine, his dad walks in. And I think a lesser show, or maybe a pilot that hadn't maybe had a lot of rewrites on it, would have had more of like a, well, I guess we're jumping again and going. But this sort of like stops dead, and because you know what this means, and you don't need the rest of the like exposition. And so I think a lot of those strengths are there. Weirdly, like the communist stuff is basically where some of the best fun and games happens, and then some where the weakest work of the pilot happens.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. But that's it. It's a pretty good hour and a half. Again, I would say the last 30 minutes drag a little bit for the things you mentioned. Like, it's not great with the action, but a very good pilot.
Yeah, I agree. What do you want to rate the pilot to Sliders?
You know what? We're starting out strong. I hope Sliders keeps going. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. Very, very effective, fun pilot to watch.
Yeah, I think I agree. I'm going to go a slight drop down. I'm going to go 7.5, I think.
Yeah.
It's almost an 8, I think. I kind of want to go 7.75. I think there's just a few little like strings that weren't working that I think could have been smoothed out. I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of forgive them. I forgive them because it's the pilot. You know what I mean? Like, I agree. I think I wouldn't be maybe as forgiving. Again, I had a good time, but it's the pilot, so like not everything's going to be perfect.
No, that's fair. So much of it is so smooth that I'm just like surprised that there's a few clunky bits in the middle where I'm just like, how come these edges needed to be smoothed out a little bit more? But it's a lot of fun. Like, it's a lot of fun for sure. And it's a good setup to a show. Like, yeah. You know the exact premise and promise of this show now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, Jordan, that about wraps it up for the episode. So before we get out of here, listeners, since we're going to be watching only the top 3 of each season, we're going to be missing a lot of episodes of Sliders, quite a few of them as we go. So if there's episodes of Sliders we don't get to that you really think we need to see, we have our bonus episodes for charity initiative, where you make a donation to a charity from a list of charities as selected by our past guests, and we'll go back and watch an episode of your choice. You get all the details at our website, continuumdrag.podbean.com, and on social media you can get a link to the website, and you can find all the information about how this initiative works and what you need to donate and how you pick an episode, blah, 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 blah. You can find it all on the website. Or if you need more explanation, you can email us here, continuumdrag@gmail.com. And then, of course, on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, we're going to have clips from Sliders. Lots of great clips from Sliders.
I think that's the best, most concise way you've ever done that, Luke.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
It was great. It was great. It was like watching it. You're like a podcast machine. Congratulations.
I'm a little machine going now. It's true.
Yeah.
Our handle on social media is @ContinuumDrag. Find all that junk there. But that wraps it up for this episode. Come back next week, more Sliders. But thank you for joining us, listener. And Jordan, see you next week.
See you then.
Continuum Drag is recorded in Toronto, Ontario, and Seoul, South Korea. Theme music by James Rick Seidler. Produced by Jordan Delic and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Yunes.